This episode of Decoding TV is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding TV, a podcast about television. I am David Chen.
I'm Roxana Hadadi.
Welcome to the podcast. On today's episode of Decoding TV, we are going to be covering The White Lotus, Season 2, Episode 5, That's Amore. Or I believe as I say it in America, That's Amore,
Yeah.
I think is what the term
That was
is.
good.
Thank you. You can find more episodes of this podcast at podcast.decodingtv.com. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com. And find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Decoding TV. I do want to call out that if you want to support podcasts like this one, all you got to do is become a paid member at decodingtv.com. You get ad-free episodes, early access to episodes, and exclusive bonuses. We're going to be recording a bonus episode talking about a lot of the email feedback we've gotten. This is a great sort of email community we have here on Decoding TV around the White Lotus, and I'm really enjoying it, Roxana. So again, tune into decodingtv.com and become a paid member to support podcasts like this one and make sure we can keep going throughout the year. But Roxana, there is one email I wanted to read on here.
Yeah, let's do it.
At decodingtv@gmail.com. And the reason I'm reading this one, we're saving a bunch of them for the bonus episode, is because this email, I think, does such a good job of summarizing what the overarching theme of this season is, in my opinion. We've been trying to figure it out. We've been trying to puzzle out what exactly is this show trying to say. And so Poshali from Austin, Texas, writes in to decodingtv@gmail.com. Quote, I've really enjoyed listening to the podcast. I, too, have been struggling to determine what message this season is trying to send viewers. But this most recent episode made clear the goal of every storyline. I believe the overarching scene of this season appears to be transactional relationships. What do people use as bargaining chips with others who they are or want to be close to? How does money and power play into this? We have that exposed literally with the sex workers and also in various ways exhibited by the couples. And then Poshali lists this sequence of examples.
Mm-hmm.
Daphne makes clear that in exchange for financial security, she's willing to overlook Cameron's indiscretions, both at work and in their marriage. Tanya's connections and money helped Greg get over his illness. Now that that's done, Tanya's prenup gets referenced as a point of contention, as well as a negotiating tool. Albie uses his nice guy status as a means of expecting Portia to hang around him, even when it's clear that it's unwanted. That one's a little...
No, that one's correct. That one's 100% correct.
Tanya uses her money/power to keep Portia hostage for Tanya's own emotional security. Bert uses his age as an excuse for bad behavior. Unwanted flirting with young women, speaking his mind and trying to get Dominic to cop to cheating on his wife. Ethan and Harper, well, maybe just Harper, use their morality along with their money to demonstrate their believed self-righteousness with others and even with each other. Cameron uses money and status as a way to entice Ethan into investing with him. And the piano man, Giuseppe, I believe, suggests Mia use her looks and sex to get ahead in the entertainment business and or in exchange for his help. These are not all of these examples are as equally strong in demonstrating the theme, but are definitely within the same category. What do you guys think? Looking forward to the upcoming episode. That's from Poshali from Austin, Texas. Thanks for the email to decodingtv@gmail.com. I really like this because once I read this email from Poshali, I started seeing it everywhere in the show. It's like, oh yeah, like every one of these relationships is like transactional in some way. Some of them weaker than others, but yeah, viewed through this lens, I feel like it's a really strong way of talking about season 2 of The White Lotus. What do you think, Roxana?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think this tracks. I thought that we had talked about it, or maybe I imagined that we had talked about it.
We mentioned it a little bit, but like...
Yeah, but this way of laying it out, I think, is very comprehensive. I think that for some of those examples, I wonder if that is transactionality versus just like personal justification of their behavior. Like I think with like Bert, I don't know how much Bert is initiating transactionality so much as he is hiding sort of behind the like generational divide. But certainly for Harper, Ethan, Cam, and Daphne, certainly for Tanya and Greg. And I also think in sort of an ominous, I don't know, potentially ominous way, in some of the new relationships that we see forming in this 5th episode. If only because like you played a clip of Quentin And I don't know, Quentin's endgame is very confusing to me. So I'm like, what is happening here? And what does he want from Tanya? And what is Tanya willing to give? And I just have a lot of questions.
I have some
To
thoughts.
that storyline.
We can get to it
Yeah.
when we get to that
Yeah.
part.
But that was a great email. I mean, all the emails have been really intriguing. So
Yeah,
I've
thanks so
appreciated that
much
feedback.
to email in at decodingtv@gmail.com, and we will be reading a bunch more emails on our Decoding TV bonus episode we're publishing this week at decodingtv.com. Okay. Roxana Hadadi, let's get to season 2, episode 5. That's Amore, which we have watched. We're going to spoil everything through this week's episode. We're not going to spoil anything in future week's episodes. What did you think overall of this episode?
I thought this episode was an interesting turning point for a lot of the relationships that we've already seen. I think that some of the stuff I've been a little frustrated with is beginning to pay off in some interesting ways. But I still am a little skeptical of the sex worker subplot. So some of the stuff I'm really sort of intrigued by. Like we mentioned, Quentin and Tanya, I'm sort of intrigued by what's happening with Harper and Ethan. It continues to be messy, I think, in a fascinating way. But some of the stuff that Mia does this episode, I was just like, why is this happening? And my notes to you were a bunch of question marks. What about you?
Again, similar to what we discussed last week, the Cam, Daphne, Harper, Ethan stuff continues to be really interesting to me. Probably because like those are the people that I quote unquote relate with the most, in the sense of like I have hung out with people like that, or I see certain characteristics of mine in some of them. Like and I find that this plotline, that dynamic, is captured really well. So I'm really enjoying that part. Quentin's a big question mark. I don't know how well the show is deploying Jennifer Coolidge this season.
I agree.
I saw a colleague of mine, Brian Rohn, say like Jennifer Connelly is basically like a spice that you need to use judiciously. And I don't know that she's been used judiciously this season. Like
Jennifer Coolidge, right? Not Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, sorry, Jennifer Coolidge. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who plays Tanya in this season? And the Albie Dom Bert storyline, like I do think that's a little bit more interesting. I continue to think you and everyone. I mean, okay, can I offer a little bit of behind the scenes
No.
view of this podcast? Is
No.
So we both got screeners for the show. Like we both were able to access the episodes in advance. And Roxana actually watched all the episodes before we'd even recorded a single episode of this podcast. She has been exceptionally good at not giving away any spoilers, and like you've done a good job of like putting yourself in the mindset of what you were when you watched that episode. I found, except when you were like ragging so hard on Albie, I was like, okay, Roxana has to know that Albie did some horrifying thing. In episode 5 that like she but it's like, no, we got to the end of episode 5 and like nothing, it's just the same old Albie. Here's what I'm going to say about Albie. I think the show has extremely overestimated how much we want to see Albie have sex. That's
interesting.
That is something I will say about the White Lotus season 2. And good for him. I'm glad he's getting some, but it's just like, I really don't think it needed to be as graphic and extensive. But that's me personally. It sounds like you actually were a fan of it. So,
well, no, my flip side point of that is that I think the show is just using the sex workers for the sex scenes. Like, we're not seeing the other people really do that. Like Tanya and Greg, it was interrupted. Certainly Harper and Ethan have not. I don't even think we've seen Cam and Daphne have sex. But all of the sexual content is just coming from the sex workers. And again, I think there is something.
Well, there's a sex scene in this episode that we don't know if it's a sex worker or not, but yeah.
Sure. I think that's something we can discuss later. But yeah, I'm sorry. Albie's actually been terrible from the beginning. That was not a tell on my
Mhm.
part. You're
I was
just
I was I was
weirdly
wondering, like,
sympathetic
did
toward this
Roxana know
man.
something and then she went,
No.
but nope, you've always just hated this guy, and that's fine.
Yeah. I've always just
Um,
thought that he was the worst. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. But yeah, so overall, I thought the episode was fine. Pretty, like, again, loving the Cam, Daphne, Harper, Ethan storyline. Also, the Albie, Bert, Dominic stuff. I think what's interesting about the Albie, Bert, Dominic stuff is, like, you're seeing, uh, yeah, arguably the show's trying to say this is one person or one male sensibility in three different timelines, right?
Right.
Like,
Like some things are cyclical, or like what do you normalize by osmosis and then end up doing yourself,
the
all
sins
that
of the
sort of
father
stuff.
passed on to the son, but also,
Sure.
like, obviously, I think Albie is being very reactionary to everything that his parents and his father and grandfather have done. And is that good, or is he just ultimately doomed to become some version of this?
Right.
That stuff I also
And
think is pretty interesting. So yeah.
and I sort of think, I mean, I was very sympathetic toward Quinn last season,
Mm-hmm.
who had sort of a weird treatment from his mother, Connie Britton's character, who is very much like white men are struggling right now, like be nicer to your brother, et cetera, et cetera. But Quinn sort of like went out and found a path of his own. It's interesting to me that Albie is certainly someone who wants to find his own path, but hasn't really figured out a way to do that yet. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
he talks a lot about that with Bert and Dom, but his actual actions do not necessarily sync up with that.
Mm-hmm.
There is a really fascinating exchange that I hope. I mean, we'll talk about it when we get to that subplot. But there was one sort of conversation between the three generations that I thought was actually very thought provoking, and I sort of wish the show had done more with it. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about it when we get there.
All right, let's dive into the episode. We're going to
Yeah.
start with Cam, Daphne, Harper, and Ethan. Every episode takes place over the course of a day, so it's
Right.
presumably day 5 of the vacation.
Right.
Ethan wakes up and finds a condom wrapper in the bathroom that Harper left out, which sparks a major fight. And at this point, Ethan finally comes clean. He
It took so
is,
long. So long
as we discussed last episode, he should have just said something
from the
last
beginning.
last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about from the beginning. It's worth trying to uphold bro code a little bit,
Oh,
but I have
okay.
to say, Ethan's instincts to not say anything, I think, were proven correct in this episode. Okay, because basically,
Interesting.
basically what he feared would happen happened, which is Harper became super passive aggressive about it, and
Sure.
obviously gave the whole thing away, which is what exactly he was afraid would happen by not, that's why he didn't tell her. So
Yes.
anyway, he tells Harper some version of the story, um, and I have to say he looks terrible in this scene. Like, he's like,
I know.
okay, we met some girls and then they were hookers, but I didn't do anything. I just watched. And she's like, you watched them have sex? And it's like, there's no
Right.
way he's coming out of this looking
There's
good.
no good scenario. I mean, already the story itself, the way he's telling it is bad. And then compounded by all the like layers of
Hmm.
like lies or non-truths. It's not good.
Ethan he's not a good liar. He wasn't designed for this. He's not cut out for this
No.
life. He's not like Cam.
No.
So
No. He's
anyway,
not slick in that way. He's not like quick on his feet in that way.
Harper gets really upset because he Ethan did Molly and invited hookers into their room the
Yeah.
last night or the night before, and it's understandable that she'd be really upset.
Yeah.
So,
I understood everything she was doing and saying in this scene. And I thought Aubrey Plaza sort of nailed that sense of the worst thing you could have thought has been confirmed to you.
mhm.
And how do you try to make sense of that happening?
Yeah.
I also feel like this must have been a lot of whiplash for the character, having been sort of discussing, you know, that she was right, quote unquote, about Cam and Daphne. And now you sort of have like more evidence of that, but your husband's also implicated in it. There's a lot happening for Harper
I
in this
agree.
scene. Yeah.
Everyone behaves pretty plausibly in this
Yeah.
thing. Um, Last week I had speculated that maybe uh, Harper thought something was going on between Cam and Ethan. I think that's
Right.
like basically been dropped, but I
Yeah.
did like in good faith put that out there as something that I
Mm-hmm.
thought she might be
Mm-hmm.
thinking about.
And
Um,
what I will say is, you saying that sort of made me think, is there more to this scene than what we saw? And I don't
mhm.
necessarily think the White Lotus does this. I
No,
don't
yeah,
recall, I don't recall there being stuff that like we get a flashback and something different happened.
yeah.
But I did sort of think that like we're getting Ethan's side of the story and only Ethan's side of the story. And again, I can understand the doubt and mistrust with which she's receiving that.
Yeah, and but also like, yeah, is there any subtext going on? Like,
Right.
if I don't know. I've never gotten smashed with a bunch of my dudes before. Like, I don't drink alcohol, so like, I don't know
Mhm.
what that. I grew up in a conservative Christian environment, so I don't know what that's like. But like,
Mhm.
um, is it weird to hire hookers and have sex with someone in front of a friend? I don't. I think so. It seems weird
Yeah.
to me, but like
Yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
this is what people do all the time. I don't know. But anyway, I'm saying like if it's not weird, or you know what I'm saying, like the fact that he's just doing it in front of her, like, is there any subtext or
Mhm.
homoerotic tension going on there? Who knows?
Sure.
Um, but I basically this episode kind of jettisons that whole thing. Like I don't think it's exploring that at all.
No.
It has other homoerotic tensions it wishes to explore, as we will discuss later this episode. So, anyway, they
Not
go to
tension. Text. It's
yeah.
very clearly there.
It's not subtext. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Um, so they see Cam and Daphne again, and they have a day trip planned to Mount Etna, where they will go day drinking at a winery. And Harper starts dropping hints. She can't
She can't not.
she can't hide her true feelings, so she's dropping
Right.
hints throughout the day. They go to Mount Etna. Harper starts drinking a lot. Cam and
Mhm.
Daphne are just making out all day. It's extremely uncomfortable. And by the way, let me just put this out there. Like, here's where I kind of like disconnect from the show is I would not be hanging out with these people anymore. Like, if they,
I
what I'm saying?
agree.
Like, I would have figured out a way to be, hey, vacation's over. We're done. Or, hey, I think we should do vacation like on our own now. There's no way I'd be like,
Yeah.
if I was on either side of the Ethan Harper situation, like if my spouse had told me, hey, I did Molly and had sex with a gigolo last night or whatever, like I'd be like, okay, we'll deal with that. But like, we're not hanging out with those folks anymore. Like, we're
Right.
not, going to have breakfast and go to Mount Etna
No,
today.
I
Like,
I completely agree. That part of it then crosses over into something implausible, because
yes.
it is not clear to me what would make Harper want to do this unless
Mm,
it is just like pettiness and potential revenge against Ethan, which I think we might sort of be setting up a little bit, like with where this storyline goes.
yeah.
But I completely agree. And Ethan has told her, hey, he wanted me to inside trade. Like, I totally understand the personal messiness that they're going through,
Hmm.
but I don't know why you wouldn't just take a day to be like, hey, we need a timeout from the two of them. Even if we're not spending the day together, we don't want to be around them. But I guess that would make good TV. I
It would
don't
make for a
know.
good TV show, but it's also like part of the reason why a show like this is good is because it can plausibly depict these kind of relationship dynamics. Like, this is the thing that it is supposed to be nailing, right? It's
And
one thing if it's like, why did the person make the decision to hang on to the bomb detonator? Like, it's like, okay, like that's for the plot, but like for this, it's like that's the meat of the show
mhm,
is the relationship. So it is a little bit weird, but I think you're bringing up a good point, which is she wants to get her revenge. She brings up like very uncomfortable topics of conversation. Who did you
yeah.
have sex with? Do you ever have a threesome? That kind of stuff at
Hmm.
the winery. Cam, I love how Cam and Daphne are like always kind of like not even passive aggressive,
No.
just like dissing on Ethan and Harper, like
They're
offhandedly,
so
like, oh
good
yeah,
at it without
different
even
date. Oh, we
trying.
we didn't really compete for the same growth. I mean, different dating pools, like,
Hmm.
so it's like, okay, Cam.
Mhm. And poor Ethan. Ethan tries to sort
Yeah.
of get some digs in because Ethan is also angry. I mean, a lot of this subplot is dominated by Harper's feelings and Aubrey Plaza's performance, but Ethan is also pissed, and I think he tries his best, but he just cannot keep up with how we've seen Harper to be, which is that like she will not let something drop, and how we've seen Cam to be, which is that he won't be one upped. And I think those two very like competitive energies
Hmm.
are going to crash at some point.
Yeah, and he calls him out on it at at
Yeah.
the winery, and that's cool. But then they Cam is like, "What's up? You told her, didn't you?" And then Ethan's like, "Dude, you left a condom there. Like, what was I supposed to do?" And then to his credit, Cam understands Ethan had no other options at that point,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
so that's the only positive thing I'll say about Cam this episode. But they go to dinner. Harper starts getting drunk and revealing way too much about their relationship, and then I think Cam touches her leg at some
I
point.
think he touches her leg.
Yeah, which
I
is just like,
I
what? Okay, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
But
Well, let's preface this by saying that like Harper at this point is talking about herself.
mhm,
Harper mentions that like she had a threesome in college. She quote unquote used to be fun. Daphne asks her if she was a good girl or a bad girl. There's almost like a sort of flirtatious vibe between all three of them a little bit. And with Daphne and Harper, I sort of get it because I think Daphne thinks now we're friends. We've sort of shared some secrets together, and these are some questions that I can ask you in that way that women can sometimes ask these questions of each other and has a little bit of a flirtatious energy. But yeah, I think Cam touches her ankle under the
mhm.
table, and then she sort of like raises her eyebrow at him, and I'm like, what is happening?
May I have always thought of Harper as just having outright contempt for Cam.
Yeah,
And so if Cam touches her and she's into it, maybe she's gonna try to get revenge. Maybe
maybe.
there's a side of Harper that we haven't seen before. Those are the possibilities that come to mind when I see that. So,
Yeah, and Ethan notices, I think. He at least
yeah,
notices Harper's reaction
yeah,
to Cam. So again, it sort of becomes that question of, does Ethan do anything? Does Harper do anything? I don't know. And again, we get the sense that Daphne knows that Cam sort of messes around, but has her own way of dealing with it. So I don't know if that conversation was placed there to sort of be another sign, like maybe Harper will attempt to do something with Cam because she thinks like Daphne like doesn't really care. I
hmm
don't know, but the
I
energy is
well, I
odd.
love that scene. I love that scene. Let's talk a little bit about that scene. So you're talking
Yeah.
about after the dinner. There's a scene where Daphne and Harper comes to Daphne and says, "Hey, I think something happened while we were
Yeah.
gone."
Yeah.
And I think at this point, Harper still suspects that maybe Ethan did something untoward at this point,
Mhm.
So she's like, I think something happened. And then the way Megan Fahey delivers the dialogue in this scene, I thought was really good and
Yeah.
chilling.
Yeah. Yeah.
She said, she says like, I'm sure if it was something like, if something happened, it wasn't a big deal, and
Right.
it's just like really like, oof, like
All the
there's something dark
compartmentalization.
under there lurking, right?
Yeah.
And then she does two other things. She says, I spend a lot of time with my personal trainer, sometimes even more than Cam, and like implying that she cheats on him. Then she hands Harper the phone,
Right.
and it's like, here's a photo of my personal trainer, and it's just a photo of her kids.
Right.
And then she's like, this is just a photo of your kids, and she's like, oh, silly me, like. But she doesn't not doing it in an over the top way. She's like playing it off like she actually made a mistake, and at first I was like, when I watched the scene twice, at first I was like confused. I was like, what is going on here? But I think what she was saying, what Daphne was saying in the scene was like, this is why I stay in this arrangement, was like,
Mhm. We have
because I
children
have, we
together.
have children and I'm not going to just leave them or blow this all up. That's kind of
Right.
how I interpret it. But like Megan Fahey played it in such an ambiguous way. I liked it, but
Yeah.
she's just like, it was weird. What'd you
When
think of the scene?
I when I got the screener for it, they had not put in the image for the photo.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like a green screen. And so that was, you sort of have to imagine what it's going to be. And then when she says like it's my kids, I was like, "Wait, what?" that was a little extra imagination on my part. But yeah,
Oh.
and I also think that earlier the only time that Harper has seemed sort of moved by their relationship or a moment where she actually believes that they have like a bond is when Daphne was talking about like her difficult labor. So I also think it's sort of a reminder of like this is bigger than us. And it was sly on Daphne's part. I think she's way more cunning as a
Yes,
character than the show initially wanted you to think.
agreed
Um,
completely.
yeah, so I don't know. And again, I sort of keep going back to the opening scene where she was very bubbly and like, you'll love it here. And I'm like, what if this woman, what if she kills Harper, Cam, and Ethan? What if?
Right.
I don't know.
So I guess like what we do know is that by the end of the trip, Daphne is still like at least somewhat happy on the trip, right? So like,
Yeah.
yeah. Um
Or very good at looking happy, which she
mhm.
is very good at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this was like the kind of emotional highlight of the episode for me was her
Hmm.
handing her the phone and being a photo of her. This is such a weird thing to do. It's just like a weird thing to do of like, here's the guy I'm having sex with on the side, and it's a photo of the kids. It's like,
Right.
huh, it's just a weird, it took me off guard so much, and I like it when a show can do that. So
Do you think that that was to mean that she's not having sex with a guy on the
no,
side?
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think she is doing stuff on the side, and she suggests to Harper like maybe you should get a trainer that'll help you out.
But does
So
that mean that she's actually telling Harper to get a trainer or she's telling Harper
no,
to have a
she's
kid?
telling Harper to do what she needs to uh, mentally to eliminate any cognitive dissonance around staying in a marriage with Ethan if Ethan is cheating on her. That's kind of my interpretation.
Okay.
You should do whatever you need to like take control, not be a victim, blah blah blah, which means getting a trainer that you have sex with potentially. That was my interpretation. So yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I could also see that in a very cynical way as have a kid.
Yeah,
In a
it's just
very cynical way. If
it,
you have a kid with
mm.
someone who has money,
Why
there's
wouldn't
a
she just say that though
I don't
instead of
know.
saying, that's it's weird. That's weird to
Why
me. That
show a picture of the children
I know
instead of a picture of
it's
the
all weird.
guy? I
It's
don't
all
know.
weird.
It's all weird. It's all strange.
It's all weird.
Yeah.
Well, that is the Cam and Daphne Harper and Ethan storyline. Now, Roxana, I have said to you in the past that I think that these characters on this show, The White Lotus, would have a much better life if they had a better community with each other.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true. You have said that.
I have said that because there's clearly not great communication going on, not a lot of
Mhm.
bonding going on, not a sense of shared purpose going on.
Mhm.
And I bring that up because this episode of Decoding TV is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving community since 1965. It's no surprise that here at Decoding TV, we love the idea of community. Over the last decade, I've been really grateful to create communities around a lot of TV shows like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, and now, of course, shows like The White Lotus and Andor that we're covering here on Decoding TV. And you can already tell from the emails, this is a group of really thoughtful, erudite people who have a lot to say about TV and TV analysis. And it's just great to be communing with them, watching a show together as it airs, and talking about it in depth. That's why I'm really proud and excited for Decoding TV to partner with McDonald's because they truly care about fostering a sense of community. And one of the biggest ways they do this is through their wonderful crew members who work hard to truly make you feel like you're right at home when you stop in McDonald's. I experience the community of the crew members at McDonald's whenever I go to my local McDonald's, which is right down the street from me. And I feel very warm and well served when I am greeted by one of the crew members of McDonald's, typically at the drive-through, and get my usual order, which is a quarter pounder with cheese and some fries. And I really love how fast the service occurs, and I really love how efficient it is. I really love how friendly it is, and of course, I love the food as well. So, whether you know that one crew member who always remembers that you like your Big Mac with an extra pickle, or the crew member who greets you in the drive-thru with a warm smile, thank you, McDonald's crew members everywhere, for making our McDonald's visits more special. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
Hmm. The whole time you were saying that, I was like, I could really go for a McDonald's apple pie, like
Indeed.
right now.
I went to McDonald's in Hawaii, and
Oh.
they had like a coconut pie.
Oh,
Which is really delicious.
that sounds delicious.
So yeah,
Was it like coconut cream?
yeah, I think so. I
Oh
think
my
it's a
god.
hopia pie, I believe. Yeah, and it was
Oh.
awesome. Highly recommend if you ever have a chance to go to McDonald's in Hawaii. So
Highly recommend travel to Hawaii for a coconut McDonald's pie.
I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying you shouldn't. All right, let's get to the rest of the episode, Roxana Hadadi.
Yes, let's do it.
A couple of other plot lines. Obviously, the Tanya and Quentin, Jack and Portia storyline. We begin with Jack naked in Portia's bed. They had sex the
Right.
previous night. Tanya calls Portia to tell her about the trip to Palermo and telling her to bring cute things. And we get some more dialogue between the two of them. Tanya says she wants to get her marriage to Greg annulled. She makes reference to the events of season 1 of the White Lotus.
Yeah.
And how like, oh, I should have spent more time there, with Belinda, the girl from Maui. But also wonders if maybe she put a curse on her.
And I don't even think she says Belinda ever. I don't remember
Correct.
if she says the name.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Portia's leaving. She runs into Albie and they have an awkward conversation because why wouldn't it be awkward? Because it was really weird the night before.
Yeah.
And I talked to you about this off the air, Roxana, but like one of the White Lotus, I'm really enjoying this season, but one of the things that's unrealistic to me about it is like how much meeting of other people is going on at these hotels. Like I have had a rare occasion to visit a hotel or a resort like this, and typically people go there because they're doing their own thing.
Right.
You can like have drinks with someone, but it's quite rare to like strike up a friendship with someone at one of these things. And maybe everyone's striking up friendships all the time. I am generally like a pretty outgoing person in this situation, but it's like people are just doing their own thing, and it's kind of weird. I like how this conversation captured this like, hey, we're probably never going to see each other again after this,
Ever. Like
ever.
in
It's
life.
like, have a good life, and it's just like you're just passing through and you happen to intersect and it didn't work out very well. So I appreciated how awkward it was and how it like recognized that fact. Any thoughts on this scene?
It was awkward. I mean, I think that was, I think that was the goal, was to sort of remind you of, again, if we want to go back to that transactional theme, remind you of the fact that like they didn't really have anything in common, right? Like Albie and Portia were not really friends. It was a way for each of them to sort of spend time without the people that they didn't want to spend time with on this trip, and sort of the hourglass of time that they needed to do that is now over, and they depart.
Beautifully said, Roxana.
Yeah.
Wow, very poetic about the Albie Portia storyline. So Portia and Tanya go on the boat.
Right.
Portia and Jack have sex.
More sex. Good for them.
We get some details from Quentin, about he's like, I really think it'll be nice for him to have someone his own age to play with. And yeah.
Interesting wording.
Interesting wording, indeed. Quentin's father apparently left him the villa they're traveling to, which has a lot of upkeep costs. But they arrive at Palermo, and Portia and Tanya talk about how good it is to be in the presence of a rich person. Tanya says, like, it's a good feeling when you realize someone has money because then you don't worry about them wanting yours. End quote. This is a very similar theme to Succession, I think. One of the things that's like true of that show is you can never tell if someone if you're in that world, you can never tell if someone actually likes you or if they just want something that you have. Or and I think in that moment, that's the moment in the show The White Lotus when I had the maximum sympathy for Tanya.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You
did not have the same. We are having like opposite reactions for virtually everything, but yeah, you did not have that reaction.
We are. Yes, I had the opposite reaction where I was like, this selfish. And I'll leave it at that. But it's interesting that you thought of Succession, because I think in Succession, like, everybody is already at this baseline level of wealth. And so sometimes the wealth almost feels ancillary to me. Like the power is what's important here in a Succession universe. But
yeah, it's more like a Succession season 1 stuff when like when Kendall was like hanging out with more people that weren't as wealthy as him,
right?
And you really felt for Kendall because he's like, you don't know, he can't tell who his real friends are, basically.
Sure.
And that's kind of what it reminded me of, that idea. Anyway, but it's cool that we had different reactions to that. So okay, so the Quentin and Tanya go to the opera. It's beautiful. Like the
Yeah.
structure is beautiful, and um, Tanya asks whether a woman at the opera is the Queen of Sicily, which Quentin laughs at, and Tanya tries to like wave to her, and like
Right.
Quentin's like making fun of her, this person that he just met.
Right.
I was watching this episode with some of my some friends,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they speculated that um, Quentin and his group are grifters, like,
Mm-hmm.
and
I
that's
think that's
why
very, yeah.
you know, and okay, and so then later, so they watch, I think it's Madame Butterfly, they watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go back to the villa. Quentin has this like very dark, serious speech about beauty and would you die for beauty, and he talks about falling in love with a straight cowboy from Wyoming,
Right.
which is the plot of Brokeback
Brokeback
Mountain.
Mountain.
It is the exact plot. I looked it up. It is in Wyoming, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like, huh.
Yes. How much? What is
It's a
any
very
of this
Kaiser
true?
Soze, you know, Kevin Spacey and Usual Suspects, like,
Right.
huh, like
Is any of
what's,
this true? Is this your villa? Was your father really an expat? Are you really an expat? Who are these men? All of it. All of it is very questionable at this point.
yeah,
And again, I keep going back to the story Quentin told about like a woman who was killed for her villa, and now people can go see it. And in his sort of the pursuit of beauty is the most important thing speech, there's sort of this angle of an individual's death is fine if the things that they possess can then be experienced by others. And I
yes,
will say part of me is a little wary of this because I almost think it's, again, doing this thing where it makes you ask for the sympathy of the ultra rich. And it's sort of painting anyone who attempts to go against that as naive or villainous in some way, which I also
mm-hmm,
think could be a reading of season one. So I'm a
mm-hmm.
little wary of this whole storyline, both in terms of political themes and also just in terms of what it means for Tanya.
Yeah, I think you know, as we said, introducing a major character like Quentin at episode 4, basically. I know he's in episode 3 as well, but like he
Right.
properly was introduced episode 4. It's like I'm really hoping he has like a strong plot purpose, right?
He might kill Tanya.
Yeah, he might kill Tanya, but it's, do you know what I'm saying? Like, as opposed
Yeah.
to we're really going to learn who Quentin is. I don't think that's going to happen in the next 2 episodes. Like,
No.
I think it's going to be like he is there to serve some purpose where he's killing Tanya. He's trying to kill Tanya. Like, who knows? Tanya's trying to kill him. Like, who knows? But it does seem as though something is not quite all there with him.
Right.
Um, also, I believe they're watching Madame Butterfly, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you actually helpfully pasted a plot summary of Madame Butterfly in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
So in Madame Butterfly, did you write this out yourself, or is this from somewhere
Yeah.
on the internet?
No, I
Okay.
wrote this.
So a U.S. naval officer marries a Japanese woman and then abandons her when he finds an American wife. She waits for him and has his child. He comes back with his new American wife, and they want to raise the child together. He's ashamed of his actions and leaves again. Madame Butterfly blindfolds her son and gives an American flag and kills herself. That's the plot of Madame Butterfly.
Right.
So, any connection there, do you think, to what's going on here in the show, Roxana?
I mean, again, I sort of think, God, I mean, there's so many things that do apply. The sense of familial legacy and again, something we've sort of seen with Lucia, which is, do you want to be American? What does it mean to be American?
Mm.
But overall, it just again made me sort of think, what is Quentin basically telling Tanya without telling
Mm-hmm.
Tanya?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Hmm.
Well, we also get some interactions with Portia and Jack. They seem to have great chemistry together.
Mm-hmm.
They go to dinner. Portia's never had an arancini. They do a dine and dash.
Okay, can we talk about this? Arancini is like at Cheesecake Factory. It's like at TGI Fridays. I refuse that Portia has not heard of an arancini. Didn't she? She's like from California. Like she went to college in California. Come on, Giada
Some
De
people,
Laurentiis is in California. I'm sure
maybe,
that Portia has had a rice
yeah.
ball. Come on.
Wow, wow. Roxana, you're not very much understanding for people not as worldly as you, I guess.
Okay,
It's kind of what I'm
please
sensing.
be real here. Do you honestly believe
I
she
think it
has
is.
not had
I
a
actually
rice
okay.
ball?
If we're being serious, I think it is very possible for someone to go through their entire life without eating a rice ball, or
Okay,
possibly even setting eyes on one.
I
So
refuse this
okay,
fully.
that's fine. So
Hmm.
Jack does a dine and dash, and again, between the dine and dash and what happens later, and like laughing at
Right,
Tanya, it really does feel like maybe they're grifters, like
right.
they're trying to like get Tanya's money or something like that.
And Jack had said something before at the beach club about how the methodology of this group is that they invite in rich older women, right? Like
mm-hmm.
he mentions that Tanya is sort of the latest in a pattern. So what sort of happens to those women is, I think, a question.
Yeah, perhaps they're murdered and their money extracted from them.
Perhaps, perhaps.
So back at the villa, Jack says he has to do something for his uncle, but tells Portia to keep her door unlocked. Later on, Tanya stumbles upon them having sex.
Who is the them?
Jack and Quentin.
Yes.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling that out.
Mm-hmm.
I will say a lot of the sex in the show is quite graphic.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty
But season
explicit.
one was like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels a little more graphic this season, but anyway.
I mean,
So this calls into question everything, right? Like, I don't think Quentin. Maybe Quentin is not Jack's uncle. That's possible.
maybe.
Um, who knows what's going on there? I don't know if you have any.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Who knows what's
no,
happening? I
no,
have
no
no
guesses or
clue.
anything. No theories at this point, Roxana.
I truly have no theories. I don't know if this is a patented HBO incest situation. I don't know if this is just, again, Jack is the hot young guy that is in this group. I don't know. I can't tell. But certainly, I also wonder, does Tanya not understand what she's saying, but we've seen that Tanya is sort of susceptible to like nightmares and sort of
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit of a slight break from reality at some points. So I don't know if she is going to like process what she's seen and talk about it, or if
Mm-hmm.
she's going to think that she was having like a nightmare or something. I don't know. But that whole scene is played very sort of surreal. The hallways seem incredibly long. The sound design is very unsettling. And you hear the moans sort of come in and out of the sound mix. So I'm curious how this moment gets played in the next season, excuse me, in the
Yeah,
next episode.
I mean, it is upsetting, right? If
Sure,
if Quentin is his uncle, that is a very deeply upsetting
sure,
idea of what's going on.
right.
So anyway, uh, so lot of questions about where that's going.
A lot of questions about
A
where
lot of
that's going.
questions.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay. Lucia and Albie, Dom and Bert. So Lucia and Albie have sex, and then she asks him, "Do you have the money?" And he is shocked. He does not have the $2,000. Um,
How did you feel about this? Because I know we talked about this last episode. The question of what were her motivations here?
yeah, I mean, I still think I was kind of correct as evidenced by her behavior in this episode where she like genuinely seems to like him, isn't asking for the money. She's like, "Hey, it's okay, like you don't need to pay me, like that's fine." Or, when he tries to pay her, he's like she's like, "That's fine." So like I still largely, I think my version of events from last episode still like I still feel that way. But
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's weird for her to, um I guess I would say she doesn't have a really good sense of people because I think you can tell just from talking with Albie, even, I don't know if it's a different language, if it's a language barrier, but it's like he seems like he doesn't. He's a hapless person.
Mm-hmm.
He is devoid of hap, as we
Sure.
might say, and
Sure.
so the idea that he understands what this arrangement is, like, I wouldn't necessarily assume that. Like, she should have made the terms like clear upfront.
See, it's so
In that,
interesting because do you not think that she was like playing on his innocence to get paid?
may you know what? Let's wait let's wait an episode or two, because like there's a whole scene where she has a disagreement with someone who might be her pimp. I think, I don't know,
Yeah.
right? Or an ex or something. Who knows
I
what that is, right?
I don't know what that is. And again,
She keeps
that's
talking
sort
about
of
this guy that she owes money to, but is that a
right.
real person, or is,
Right. Right.
so it's hard to know she's what her real game is,
It's
in my
not
opinion.
I struggle with this so much because I don't necessarily want to say it's not well written. There's
Hmm.
clearly some level of ambiguity that we are supposed to have as the viewer.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like I think we didn't really get a sense of who Lucia and Mia were before they came to the resort. So I cannot tell how much of their behavior is sort of a genuine character shift and how much of it is because the plot
Right.
wants them to go in certain places.
This is a problem, right? Like
Right,
we don't know what we're looking at. Are we
right,
watching Lucia prey on this guy, right? Are we
right.
watching her actually, have a misunderstanding with this guy? Are
And
we watching
actually
her,
develop feelings for
right?
him.
Like, yeah.
Right,
What are we watching? We don't know yet.
right,
And I
right.
think by the end of the season we'll have a clear idea. But this is the kind of um some of the challenges with like some of these
Hmm.
characters. Here's what I will also say: we didn't mention this earlier when we talked about Cam as well, but Cam seems to have trouble getting the money, or he hasn't been able to get the money.
Right. Has
Also very
not
possible
gone
that
yet.
Cam and Harper are grifters to some. I mean, we know for a
Cam and
fact that
Daphne, you mean?
yeah, sorry, Cam and
Yeah.
Daphne are grifters, because it's like, does he have the money at all? Like, is this a thing where what went through my mind is like maybe Cam's kind of one of these Bernie Madoff types where like his whole empire is built off of lies, where
Well,
like,
Daphne does mention Bernie, right? She mentions, yeah,
mhm.
let me be clear, not my beloved Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Madoff. She does mention that Bernie Madoff types are like the really
Yeah,
bad
he's like,
guys at
he's not
Cam's
like Cam is
office.
not like that, is
Yeah.
what she says. But
I'll be honest, I just took it as he was going to stiff them. Not that he had problems getting the money, but that he just didn't care to get the money,
mhm.
because he doesn't care about paying them. And he does a pretty good job continuing to avoid them and not having to pay. So I just took that as another like Cam is a jerk sign. But I think
I could see a scenario where he actually doesn't have any wealth at all.
I could see that too.
And he gets to the end of a trip and is like, "Oh, hey, Ethan, can you cover us for this trip?"
Right.
Because he knows Ethan's good for it.
And this was
Um,
like their last ditch attempt. Like, invite
yeah,
these people on this vacation, try to convince Ethan
yeah,
to invest money with them, and see where it goes.
yeah. But
Yeah,
but I do think that's something that like staying at a place like the White Lotus, Sicily, like projects the edifice of wealth, like
of course.
the
Yeah,
sort of appearance of wealth when may not actually exist. And
right.
that is something I do think the show is playing around with. Like, all these people like look the same, quote unquote. They all look the
Mm-hmm.
same. Any
Mm-hmm.
of them could be billionaires,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the show is really, especially with the Quentin storyline, the show is really playing with that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway, so Albie's like, "Hey, I gotta get money from the bank."
I have to get some euros.
Yeah,
And
and
Dom
his dad's
immediately
like,
knows
"Yeah,
what that
here's like
means.
500 euros or several," and he's like, "I need more than that." And it's like,
Yeah.
why do you need more than that? It's a very logical question. Why would you need more than a few hundred
Mm-hmm.
euros?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
At a
but
resort where everything is paid for.
it's such a weird situation to be in. Like, so the reaction I saw, and then later at dinner, like Dom and Bert see that Albie and
They're
Lucy are
together.
hanging out again.
Yeah.
The reaction I saw is like, it is unforgivable that Dominic doesn't say something to Albie about this thing. And I guess I'm curious, like, if you have any opinion on that.
Are you saying you think it's unforgivable?
Well, I've seen people react like, uh, can I don't want to, I want to be sex positive here on the podcast,
Sure. Yeah.
but I think it's weird to, that if you, I would think it'd be weird if like my dad had sex with someone and then like that person got together with me like 2 days later, like,
Mhm.
I think that's just a weird thing to have happen.
Right. It's
Um,
purposefully weird. The show is
yes,
purposefully making it weird. Right.
yes. Um, but I guess what's ended up happening is like Dominic, in trying to project this image of himself that he's improved, doesn't tell Albie about this situation, and now like he and Albie are both trying to are both entangled with Lucia in a way that is probably going to have some kind of explosive consequences, I would say.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, the other thing I think is like, is it Dom's place to tell Albie?
Yes.
Do you really
Yes, I
think
think
that?
it is. I think it is
Okay.
like, hey, by the way, I hired a prostitute. That woman's a prostitute. I
But
had
Albie
sex with her.
knows that now, right? So why does
Yeah.
it matter who she slept with
Well,
before?
he should have told her. He should have told him before, or prevent. Like he saw them together the night. You know what I'm saying? Like he saw them together the night before they had sex. So he should have said at that. That would have been a good time to like let him in on like what's
But
going
why
on there,
would he need to prevent it from happening?
so that Albie is not in this weird situation as I've already tried to lay out.
But maybe it's not a weird situation for Albie.
Okay. You think if Albie knew that Lucia had been with his father 2 nights ago, he would still be cool with the situation?
I don't think he would be. I don't think we know enough about him to know if he would be cool with it.
Mm.
But I
Okay.
just hesitate to say whether it would necessarily be appropriate for Dom to try to like stop it from happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I just sort of feel like it's if Albie wanted to have sex with her, then I sort of think
Dom's
it's
like, yeah,
not
who am I to stop that, basically, right?
right. I
Like,
mean, I sort of think it's not his father's business. I mean, I understand what you're
mm-hmm.
saying. I think it would be different if this was like a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember reading like a Ask Abby or something where it was like a father who was in like an open relationship with a woman, and then the woman slept with his son, and it was like a whole thing. But this
Yeah.
is not like a
You just don't
relationship.
want to be involved. You don't want to be in that situation. Like, it's just not a good situation to be in, right? And he
Okay,
could have
well,
stopped it from happening. It kind of is what I'm trying to say, right?
I
But
guess, but I
he could have stopped it at great personal cost to himself. He could have stopped it from happening, and he didn't. So
I just hesitate to say he could have stopped it because it's like, is it his place to sort of dictate who Lucia can and cannot sleep with?
he's not
Their
dictating
relationship is
anything. He's.
transactional. If
I'm
we're
not
going back to the
suggesting he.
transactional thing, their relationship is transactional. She has performed the service.
Mm-hmm.
She does not owe him anything else.
I'm not suggesting he. I'm not suggesting he dictate anything about what Lucia does. I am suggesting he should have told his son, "Hey, that's the girl I had sex with because she's a prostitute a couple nights ago,
But that
and things."
itself affects Lucia, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we don't. According to you, not necessarily, Roxana. According to you, like
No.
Albie might be like, okay, that's cool. I'm cool with that. Like
Yeah, but
so.
my point is that it is an attempt to stop
Sure.
something. Like you said, it's an
Hmm.
attempt to prevent something or to stop something, and I don't necessarily know if that's Dom's place to do that.
Yeah.
Cuz like Bert knows and like Bert doesn't care.
Here,
Bert
here's
just
what here's what I want people to do. I want people to email in at decodingtv@gmail.com
Oh, you're making
and
like a poll. Okay.
tell us, should Dominic have prevented this whole thing from happening? Let us know.
Mhm.
Whether it's whether the show is trying to say, or whether you personally believe Dominic could have and should have prevented this whole mess.
Also,
Um,
put into your email whether you find David Chen being anti-sex right now. Can you also put that in your email? Thank
wow.
you
Okay.
so much. Thank you.
Jesus. Decodingtv@gmail.com.
Yeah, get it all in there.
I'm
You
trying
know.
not. I think most people can recognize this is a messy situation. That's all I'm
Very
saying.
messy.
Okay.
How do you
Yeah.
feel about Bert basically just laughing at it though? Because I
I think
find that
that's
very funny.
it's hilarious. I think yes, Bert is probably a huge piece of shit,
Yeah,
but he's gone from he has been less overtly hitting on everyone throughout the week, and therefore has gone from someone who's like reprehensible in the early episode to hey, I'm actually kind of starting to like this guy. Not obviously he's done horrible things and is probably
sure.
not a good person, but as a presence on screen, it's funny to have a kind of he's kind of like an audience surrogate almost. Like, look at these
Yeah.
people. Look at these stupid things they're doing. I like
Can
that
we
part about him.
so then along those lines, can we talk about the conversation he has with Albie about sex work? Because I think it's very interesting.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this is where so Bert very frankly to Albie is like, she's an escort. Like,
Yeah.
we all know that she's an escort. And Albie
He's like,
says,
how do you know? And he's like, I mean, I wasn't born yesterday. You know,
right,
like he has to like,
right.
yeah.
And Albie says they probably don't want to be escorts. They're just
Hmm.
poor and victims of a fucked up system. To which Bert says, women aren't all saints, Albie. They're just like us, which I really appreciated a
Hmm.
lot
Hmm.
because I think this is again sort of my um, Albie nice guy facade, finding it sort of problematic. This again goes back to how I feel about his commentary on The Godfather. I think we got an email where someone said, like, absolutely men read The Godfather like that. And you're right, like, men absolutely do. But my point more so is that sometimes it feels like Albie is saying these things which he thinks are like pro woman, but in a certain way, they are flattening and like putting women in like a perpetual like victimization scenario, which is not necessarily um, fair. I mean, it's not necessarily fair. So it's interesting to me because I can't tell, does Lucia actually have a pimp? Is that a story she told Albie? Is this a way to sort of like, I don't want to say secure Albie because I feel like then that's not me being sex positive, but it's all very like messy and sort of complicated because again, we're getting this mix of like personal life and professional life hitting up against traditional gender roles and expectations of sex work. And so I appreciated that we got Albie sort of again saying something where I'm like, I feel like you as a character think this is like the good quote unquote thing to say. And I do appreciate that there's someone being like, I don't think that's as progressive as you think it is. And I sort of liked that coming from Bert. The flip side of that is that Bert watches Mia play the piano very intently and it made me concerned. So everyone on this
I,
show continues to
that
be problematic.
that was very beautifully said,
Oh,
Roxana,
thank you.
and I think it's a great point. I think that what we are seeing with Albie versus Bert and Dominic is like is Albie is a reaction to
Right.
Bert and Dominic. You know,
Yes. It
Albie's views on women and gender roles are a reaction to Bert and Dominic. And I think what we're seeing is it is good to be a reaction to Bert and Dominic, but the reaction must have nuance, which
right.
Albie does not have.
Or
Right?
feel sincere. I mean, also like Albie is very young. So at the same time, it's like I don't want to say that
I think it's very
everything he's
sincere. Yeah.
yeah, like everything he's doing is for naught. Like part of
Yes.
me is like, this is great. Like it's good to want
Yes.
to be more of like an ally and more of a
Yes.
supporter and all that stuff. But what I think the show is sort of what I worry about it saying is that certain things are like so learned or so inherited that you can't change that. So I'm just a little,
Yeah.
again,
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's he just doesn't know much about the world. He's very inexperienced. He thinks he knows everything. You know, like
right.
and but I think that I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, like in schools and stuff, like the way prostitutes were spoken about was prostitutes bad. You
Of
know,
course.
that's
Yeah.
how I was raised, and it's like.
Hmm.
But then, like as you grow up, you're like, oh, like a lot of them don't even want to be prostitutes. They're part of a
Hmm.
system that they can't get out of. But it's like really complicated. It's not that
Hmm.
simple as prostitutes equals bad. And Albie's coming out and saying like, hey, you shouldn't judge them, especially that you guys are all fucked up. Like you can't judge them. But it's like, sometimes you can, but like maybe Albie is right most of the time, but sometimes you can't. We don't
Yeah.
know what it is in this situation.
Like two of
Um,
these things can coexist.
yes, yes,
There can be a system that sexualizes and dehumanizes women and essentially allows like the human trafficking element of sexual slavery to happen. Absolutely, yes, that exists. There also is a scenario in which a woman can make that choice and do that as a profession, and it is not something where a man is like manipulating her or forcing her to do that.
yeah,
So those two things can coexist, and I think we just haven't gotten to the point where Albie can realize that those two things can coexist.
yeah.
And because we don't know Lucia and Mia well enough as characters, I cannot tell which side of that the show is falling down on.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed. Yeah.
so yeah, so I don't know exactly where that's going to go, but yeah, Bert and Dom sort of have this conversation about like what did each of them normalize to the other, what has Albie learned from them. Dom
Yeah.
still continues to be concerned, I think, about Albie and Lucia and where that could go.
I liked the Bert Dom conversation. It kind of makes explicit a lot of things that were implicit, and
Hmm.
it feels like it's rare to see these two people confront each other in this way, and so it's
Yeah,
like feels like a consequential moment in their relationship.
yeah.
Um, so what else?
Lucia and Albie have sex again.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Thank goodness we got shown that again in detail.
we got
Uh,
two Albie sex scenes. So again, raising the question of is this an arrangement or is this a
mhm,
potential relationship? Hard to
mhm.
say.
Yeah, he does give her money, and she like acts weird about it.
Right,
Albie's like worried that she's being exploited, and
right,
it's unclear if she is. So
right.
anyway, okay, couple of other minor plot lines to discuss. Valentina and Isabella. Valentina's kind of a toxic bad boss.
Valentina is essentially Lydia Tarr. Is that what I'm to understand?
Wow.
Is that
Okay. Yes. I do find it interesting. I believe Mike White is gay, right?
Yes.
And it is interesting to me that like the two gay characters, or the two major gay characters that we know of in the show, one of them is like definitely, I would argue, an abusive manager, or I don't, what's the right term? Like,
Valentina, yes. Okay,
yeah.
I think that's right.
And then
Sure.
the other one is Quentin, who like probably has sinister purposes
Mhm.
for whatever he's doing. But yes, Valentina reassigns Rocco. She doesn't like Rocco and Isabella being such good friends, and
Mhm.
reassigns this guy who she couldn't possibly be sexually attracted to, in her estimation. So
Right.
um,
Poor Rocco. Rocco actually seems good at his job. Hope you have fun at the beach club, buddy.
yeah. But then Lucia is the one that goes to Valentina and offers her like, "Hey,
Mia.
let Mia, sorry, Mia's the one,
Yeah.
who goes to Valentina and says, hey, if you let me play piano, and I can show you a good time," because she senses, probably rightly, that Valentina is very repressed. And what's up, Roxana? You're shaking your head.
This whole story just did not, this whole turn I did not buy at all. Like in the least.
You didn't
Because I
buy in what sense?
in the sense that when we first met Mia, she was someone who's very
Oh yeah,
torn up about her breakup with her boyfriend. And now, all of a sudden, in the span of 5 days, she has become like a conniving, ambitious person, able to tell that Valentina is a lesbian and able to offer herself to Valentina in exchange for playing the piano a couple nights a week. It just felt like such a hard turn
yeah.
for this character, and I did not entirely buy it.
I agree
Yeah.
about the Mia part. It's really weird too. Like, why didn't they just start the character out that way?
Right.
Or like closer to that than what we saw at the beginning. Certainly.
Right. And she
Um,
didn't enjoy this scenario with Giuseppe. Like, the way that
right,
the
right.
preceding episode ended, I thought that she was actually really, sort of
Shaken by it.
disgusted and
Yeah,
demoralized by what
yeah.
had happened, shaken by his, like, health scare. So I don't know if this is just the show being like, Mia is queer, and that's fine, but I think there is a different way to have shown that than all of a sudden her, trying to hit up Valentina in a sexual way for a job.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. Um, I also just wish. I don't think we have spent enough time with Valentina for this. Like, I could see this plot, like the idea of the plot I actually kind of like, which is like
Mhm.
Valentina's repressed. She's like taking out her anger and disappointment on like her underlings. Um, and then like here's this woman that like offers her like a way out of that, or a way to like satisfy some of her desires, and like of course she'd be interested in that. That's like an interesting plot like inherently.
Mhm.
I just don't think we spent quite enough time with Valentina. Like I don't think she's quite enough well drawn of a character for it to fully land.
Right.
It's not terrible, but it's just like not the show firing on all cylinders in my opinion. And you're right, the Mia stuff is really weird. That said, we got to hear her sing this episode. I thought she has a lovely voice. The piano is okay. That's what
Fine.
my
Yeah,
reaction
it's
was.
fine. It just it feels disconnected from the rest of the storyline. Thematically, I understand what it's going for. But it also feels like such a simplistic way of exploring that transactional relationship
Mhm.
that I just am not as impressed by it, I would say.
Indeed. And that is all the plot lines for the episode, I think. Any other thoughts, Roxana?
I don't think so. I mean, I just think that we're probably in for this episode was very not all over the place, but you got a lot more overlap between the episodes. I think there was a
Mhm.
lot more editing happening. And
Between the plot lines, I think is
yes, and I
right.
think we probably will see that more in 6 and 7. I think we're now fully in that things have to begin to wrap up mode.
Yeah. More plot lines colliding, but also like a lot of locations this episode. Like we're
Mhm.
on the boat, we're at Palermo, like we're all these,
Mhm. Mount
which
Etna.
Mount Etna, which I don't remember. I don't think the White Lotus ever really left. Like season 1 ever really left the resort because for COVID reasons.
Right.
I'm pretty sure like they shot it at the height of COVID, and everyone stayed at that place in real life.
Mhm.
But I don't think they ever really left for production reasons. Here, they've been leaving the resort a lot more. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I have a feeling it's all going to end up at the White Lotus Sicily. So. All right, folks, that's going to bring us into this week's episode of Decoding TV. Find more episodes at podcast.decodingtv.com. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com. Find us on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube at Decoding TV. Roxana, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
You can find me on Vulture and at Twitter.
And if you want to support this podcast and make possible what we do throughout the year, go to decodingtv.com and please become a paid member. Get access to early episodes, ad-free episodes, and exclusive bonuses that we record. All right. She is Roxana Hadadi. I'm David Chen. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with The White Lotus Season 2, Episode 6 recap. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.